All right, folks. Hey, we have been rocking and rolling with the Kangaroo Leadership Podcast. Hey, as always, as promised, Kangaroo leaders, people moving forward, people making decisions because of the fact that we have to move forward. And every once in a while, I get a special guest or I'm excited about something. Sometimes when people write and say, "Hey, Dave, I'd like to be on your show," sometimes I think it's interesting for you and I'm going to learn something. And then sometimes it's right in my wheelhouse. And then sometimes it's more about me. So today's a show that's a little bit more about me because our guest, Phyllis Leavitt from Taos, New Mexico, look that one up. It's pretty cool. She's written a book, but she's a subject matter expert on a lot of things. The book's called America in Therapy. We're going to let her talk about that a little bit, but I'm excited for her to give us some tips that I think are near and dear to what's going on in our world. So, Phyllis, without further ado, please let us know about you and where you're from and what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much for having me as a guest on your show. It's always a pleasure to be able to share what I feel passionate about and to share what I've learned through some difficult experiences of my own, but also professionally as a psychotherapist for well over 30 years. Because you learn a lot talking to many different people with all kinds of stories who've really come for healing, who've come to alleviate some of the pain that they've accumulated, some of the dysfunctional behaviors that have resulted from injurious behaviors or, scary experiences or disconnection and lack of love from other people or lack of support. So it's really my pleasure to be able to speak with you today. I wrote my book, America in Therapy. I had the idea for it many, many years ago, and it finally came to fruition and got published last year. And really where it came from was through my own experience of working through my own childhood trauma in therapy and really working so hard over a number of years to make a clearer, deeper connection to my most essential self, which is where I feel like our healing really lies, when we can peel back the layers of wounding and dysfunctional behavior and false beliefs about ourselves and other people, that there is an essential, beautiful, loving self inside of all of us that we were born with. And so the goal of therapy is to uncover that and make it available for us and for the world around us. And so the idea was, if we can do that individually, if we can heal our family dynamics that have contributed in many cases contributed to our worst pain and dysfunction and negative beliefs about ourselves and the world around us, if we can do that on an individual and a family level, we can do that on the level of the family of America or the family of really humanity. Because America is a mass of individuals. So the more we can each heal and understand the roots of our own disconnection or violence or discrimination, and it might be aimed at ourselves as well as other people, the more we can bring that to a societal level of functioning. And I think we're just in absolute desperate need for that today. I'll just say one big contention of my book, and then please jump in. And that is that we're being conditioned to believe that all of this escalating violence and hatred and discrimination and talks of war are the result of ideological differences. And they're not. They're really the result of our declining mental health. And the reason why I say that is because mentally healthy people want to work things out. They want to have peace. They want to have loving connection. They want to be supported and support others. They have a sense of boundaries of where they end and other people begin. And they have a sense of themselves as a part of a larger whole, whether it's a family or a community or a church or a business or an educational facility, that we're parts of a whole and that we do best when we're considered as individuals and we're also considering the good of the whole. And that's what mentally healthy people are committed to. Do they do it perfectly? No. But we come back to the table and we try to keep working it out without violence, peacefully. And that's one of the hallmarks of mental health, is that we're committed to peaceful conflict resolution. And so as a country, I think we're in desperate need of what the whole field of psychology really has to teach us about how we could heal our human relations rather than escalate our divisiveness.
Yeah, it's so man, there's so much there to unpack. So I'm gonna talk out loud, and then I'll let you answer whatever you want to answer. One thing
Please.
one one thing that made me curious is, and you talked about it. It starts with your roots and your foundation. However, in most foundations, there's some sort of care and loving that you can balance off of instead of focusing on the negative. So that's one set aside. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your story, how you graduated from trauma, from healing to actually being the healer, because I'm a nurse and I've done shock trauma. And so it's exhausting. So when
Yeah.
you get into the business, it's exhausting and you have to learn how to keep your own energy up. The second thing is that, and I'll just use my world, especially being a man, and a Bible study, we talk about this a lot. A man's default to adversity in life, it could be combat trauma, it could be, trauma, physical trauma, mental trauma. It could be whatever it is. You could be a police officer and have PTS. You could be have PTS just from a bad relationship or an abusive situation. Any of those type of things. You understand all of that. In the past, I would say maybe in my grandmother's generation, I didn't see a lot of angry people. I saw a lot of people that took a deep breath and did some processing and started to work through things, and then they would state where the disconnects were, and you saw some sort. Now, it wasn't didn't mean there wasn't yelling and screaming. I grew up. I'm fourth generation Portuguese, so I grew up in a household that when things were going south, the language changed from English to Portuguese. But most of us weren't exposed to. I don't speak Portuguese. Most of us weren't exposed to the finer points of that, which is amazing. But I want you to talk a little bit about how we progressed to anger. Dave's theory on anger being the default emotion versus grace and empathy. Anger being the default emotion, and then aggression probably being the action based from the emotion. I want you to talk about how we got there, because I really think that there's two things. And some of it has to do with technology, and some of it has to do with our society. One is extended nuclear families are, in essence, the foundation to love. Period. Grandmother, mother, father, all that type of stuff. We don't have those at large anymore. That's number one.
Right.
And then, so talk on that before I get going too much, because I'll run you down 10 rabbit holes.
Right. Well,
But
I already have 50 thoughts, so
sure,
I'll try to condense it a little
yeah.
bit. For one thing, I think, my experience is that I grew up in a home where anger came out kind of sideways. There wasn't a lot of yelling and screaming. The yelling that I heard was sort of my mother yelling in the middle of the night at my father, and it woke me up. But in the daytime, that wasn't pretty much the case. But the anger was there. It just came out sideways, or it came out as control, or it came out a lot as judgment.
Mm,
Um, and so there's a lot of ways for anger to be expressed, for one thing. But what I would say from my practice as a psychotherapist, and not only my own childhood, is that there's a lot more rage and a lot more abuse and neglect, emotional violence, sexual violence, physical violence in homes in America today than many of us know. Because a lot of things happen behind closed doors. And when you're in an office with people and you hear their stories and they go back to some of their formative experiences, for me, sometimes it was shocking the level of violence that people experienced in their own homes, and then felt like they could never talk about because they felt shame about it, or
hmm
they felt like they were to blame for it, or they felt like they just had to show the world that they had it all together, which I think we still kind of perpetuate in our society today, so that it stays buried and it festers and comes out as symptoms.
So I want to stop you there just for a
Yeah.
statistical thing. If I run a company and I have 100 people working in my company, what do you think the percentage of people that have some level of anger, abuse, or dysfunction at home is out of that 100?
I would be very hesitant to put a number, but I would say it's probably the majority because that's just really what I've encountered. And again, it's on a continuum from terrible messages like you're too fat or you're stupid or you're not going to amount to
Oh, it's
anything,
that's so true. That
right?
is,
To overt, beating and rape and being thrown out of a family, or so that it's on a continuum, but it's all damaging to our sense of self and to our perceptions about who we need to be in the world and the coping mechanisms that we then pass on in our relationships and to our children. And so the whole world of psychology, the beauty of it is that we can look that stuff in the face without judgment, without blame, without condemnation, without a desire for revenge, but with a desire to heal and change our innermost relationship to ourselves so that we don't have to repeat the worst of what's happened to us or the worst of what we've seen as role models for behavior.
So
go ahead.
So one little anecdote. So for the audience, you all know I'm a farm boy, right? And a lot of times people will take a picture of a farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. You know, it's got acres of agriculture around it with a sunset. And that looks so serene, and people go, gosh, that must just be wonderful. I will tell you, do not think that what Phyllis is talking about is happening only in Philadelphia and Los Angeles. It's
Right.
happening in Taos, New Mexico, and Circle, Montana. This is not it's not socioeconomic. It's not geographic. It transcends everything. And a lot of times, as you said, it's passed on. So with all of that you said, Phyllis, because I really want you to get to some of your modalities and approaches because people are going to want to do that. But with all of that said, I want you to talk about self-love, self-care, self-actualization, and self-talk.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
once I started to get my head around what I was telling myself, as I started to believe, it helped me heal because I had to scold myself for putting myself in a bad situation. So a lot of it can be handled internally.
Absolutely. And, I think that's part of what good healing does, because when you are hurt by other people in any way, and especially if it's sustained, and especially if it's by the people you depend on most, who you really depend on for love and safety and connection and being provided for, when we're hurt by those people and we internalize something negative about ourselves, most children do not have the capacity to say, there's something wrong with my parents or my teacher or so and so. They think they deserved it. They think they're to blame. And often they've gotten overt messages that they are to blame for the abuse that they've experienced. Whether it's overt or covert, that's what we generally internalize. And I did. I thought I was a very flawed human being. And I spent a lot of my young life just trying to hide that so no one would see how flawed I was. And so the beauty of the therapy that I did, and I did quite a bit of healing work, was that I was able to begin to remember in more detail some of the trauma that I had sustained. And I had this incredible opening to my own essential loving self, because nobody deserves to be hurt. We're not born bad. No, there's no baby born deserving to be beaten or raped or told negative things about themselves. We learn these things from the ways we're treated by other people. And if we're treated with love and respect and care and peaceful conflict resolution, we internalize a loving sense of ourselves. But many, many people have not. And so for me, the whole process of uncovering what happened to me eventually opened up. And I'll tell you, in the very beginning of the work that I did personally, I didn't want to contact that little girl inside of me because I didn't like her. I thought she was really flawed and unlovable. And it was only through really uncovering and peeling back the layers and finding more and more contact with my own loving, beautiful self, which we all have. It's not just me. We all have it. That I was able to access more of my own creativity, make better choices in relationship, feel more stable and substantial in the world, and begin to believe in myself. And so it's that healing process that I think uncovers our greatest potential as human beings. And right now, in the world we live in, we're giving a lot of people the message that they're flawed, that they're inferior, that they're not worthy of good treatment, that they deserve punishment or hatred or withholding and abuse. And that only reinforces all the layers that cover up their beautiful essential self and the potential of who they could actually be in the world for all of our benefit, not just their own.
Talk to me about the social landmines that are out there with the labeling, the advertising, the social media, the mainstream media, whichever you pick. People love affirmation, so they only turn the television channel on that tells them what they want to hear, and they don't listen to
Right,
the different
right,
opinions and try to have an open mind about that. Can
right.
you talk to me about that, because that's an extra hurdle? And I think people don't understand that even if they are kind of leaning towards getting better, sometimes all it takes is a 10-second commercial and you're messed up again, whatever
Right.
that is.
Well, and what you're pointing to is why I say America in therapy. And I talk about America as the family of America, because all groups of people operate on family dynamics, whether they're healthy or not. And so in a healthy family, you're not feeding each other lots of negative messages to people about who they are or about who other people are. In a healthy family, you learn to look with compassion on other people and try to understand them or listen to their pain or talk to them to try to resolve something rather than just fight your battle and try to be right
Mm.
and dominate them. And in the family of America, unfortunately, there's great asset to the technologies we have if we choose to use them for the good. So a lot of what social media and the news and even some of our like movies and music perpetuate is this othering of other people. And that's like a family system that says all Black people or all women or all Muslims or all Jews are bad and inferior. If you're learning that in your family and that's the message you get, people tend to believe what they hear
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
So we as a family of America are responsible for what we're putting on the airwaves. Just like we say parents are responsible for what they're putting out to their children and to each other. And could we take that responsibility and actually use the technologies that we have to promote brotherly love and peace and cooperation and deep listening and compassion? And we're far from that right now.
Can you talk to me about the extinction of societal support? So these are words that just came out of my head. This is not something that I use.
Mm,
But the extinction of societal support goes along with the book Bowling Alone. And I don't know if you've read that book
I
about bowling.
haven't. No, but it sounds
But
good.
it's a tremendous
Yeah.
book. It's a long read. It's probably better put on an audiobook in a car on a long drive to kind of absorb.
Okay.
The context of the book is that generations ago we went to work, we came home, we changed our clothes, and we went to our Tuesday bowling league. And at that Tuesday bowling league was Joe and Bill and John, and they were all from different walks of life, but this was our inner circle. And they had kids the same age, and there was just a whole society within a society. There was affirmation. There was people spending time together, sharing like type challenges and those type of things, so that everything seems less daunting, right? You just have a different. Now we bowl alone. Even if we want to go bowling, we just go bowl
Mm,
by ourselves. And part of that's technology that's done that and those type of things. So it's clubs and the American Red Cross, every community had one. They had a bunch of volunteers. Now it's all regional. There's nobody that's involved until the accident or the disaster happens. So talk to me about the loss of that, because sometimes the people that used to save you from your inner pain in your household were your teachers and your coaches and those type of things. And we've even made school a bad place to go to, and we've demonized coaches, and coaches have become predators or those type of things. And then, because I'm going to let you talk, I'm going to give you
no, you're
the
good.
I'm going to give you the back end of this. If you can talk to that loss of societal support, the support system, or the extinction of it. I also want you to talk about when you're trying to heal, how to recognize narcissists and people that prey on your pain. Because this is in my mentoring right now in my world, a lot of people that I mentor, I'm having to teach them how to shake themselves away from a true narcissist
Right.
to get better.
Well, actually, I think in a nutshell, I would say the two issues are related. I think, and I'm not an expert in all fields of sociology and human development, but what I can say from my experience, my field, psychology, and my observation through that lens of the world around me, that this is one of the technology has a lot to do with this sense of isolationism. you can have your own TV, you can have your own car, you can have your own personal trainer, you can have your own computer, you can have your own this and your own that. And it gives us the illusion that we're actually independent. And we have really made that a very laudable thing, especially here in America. I don't know what it's like in every country, but the self-made man, and I did it alone, and I rose from rags to riches. And we kind of look at that as the ideal, when in fact, it's not only not true, but it's not an ideal that's sustainable.
Right.
So it's not true in the sense that I might have my own TV and my own car and my own house and my own this and my own that and my own food and my own refrigerator. But the truth is, I couldn't have any of those things without millions of people I will never know and never see. And we forget that we are actually more dependent on more people around the world than we've ever been when we had our own little farm and we hunted deer, right? But we feed this illusion that we're more and more independent. And I think we've fed that illusion as a country, that we should be, our own island and be the top of the heap.
Yeah.
When in fact we are, as a country, as individuals, as communities, as families, we're completely dependent on the whole world being safe and being habitable. And that's a big illusion that we have to bust, that we can be independent and self-made in that way. And then in the world of psychology, we really understand that, because we understand that we are at the effect of the health or ill health of the family systems we grow up in. And the narcissism, I think, grows out of that. Like, if I can believe that I did it all myself and I don't need you, and we've made I don't need you sexy in our society, which is totally ridiculous, but we have. And I think we have to really bust that bubble that needing each other, we actually do need each other. And it's not a sign of weakness. If I'm coming from my 2-year-old, yeah, that I need to heal that. But adults actually need each other for a sense of belonging, for safety, for emotional food, for support, for encouragement. We need each other for that. And that, acknowledging that, is actually a strength and not a weakness.
Yes.
And we just have
I
to
agree.
shift these paradigms massively. And my book is dedicated to trying to educate people about all these things and much more, that's in my book. Yeah.
Well, and how to get help. So folks, she's not going to give you a checklist. The book's never a checklist. The book makes you introspective, and through introspection, you got to do the work. I have to, because I know exactly where you're going, because I've had to do the work. And if you don't get help,
Right.
So at Bible study, I asked one of the young men who's a couple generations removed from me, 1.5. I said, what's your perception of us? What are you listening to us for? Where are you getting your advice? And then where do you think that we're all just way off base? And he gave 4 things. I'm not going to give all 4 to you, because that's a whole other podcast. But one of the number 4 thing that he said was the mistruth, or the lie that our generation sells to their generation, is a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. But this, but if you think about what you just said, that's true. Because if women are raised to do it by themselves, you don't need anybody else. You've got to, you have these glass ceilings. You got to do things. And I agree with that, by the way. Most women have to do 2 extra iterations of something to get to the same spot. I believe that there's a gap there. And I get run out of rooms with different audiences when I say stuff like that, because they look at me and think that I've lost my manhood. And I think it's actually more manly to actually say that out loud, because if you take care of a woman, especially in your relationship, there's harmonious stuff. And that's, if anybody's going to affirm you, pump you up, give you A pluses on your work, it's going to be the woman in your life, period. So regardless of that, talk to me about environment, because I think we're products of 2 things: our environment and our genetics. Genetics we can try to manage with our doctor, but your hips are still going to hurt and your kidneys are going to fail if that's the way you're lined up genetically. That's just the way it's going to be. Mm-hmm. But your environment, I like to use the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. If you swap your environment, right, things will change for you. And you have control over that mostly. Now, sometimes finances get in the way, and you can't have a big castle and a house and 7 servants. That's not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about your social environment. Who do you have around you? Who do you let in? Who do you let help? And then your internal environment in your head. And what type of environment do you create in there? Is it a jumbled mess that smells like dog feces? Or is it a clean place that's organized and has vision and hope and all the other things going on in it? So if you could talk to that, I think it would be great because
Well, I think what you're talking about is what I'm calling looking at nature and nurture. Yeah, we're born with our individual nature, but nurture is almost everything these days. What are the role models that are being shown to us in our homes? How do men treat women? How do women treat men? How do parents treat children? How do people relate to making money or spending money? What are their values? Who do they seek out? What community organizations do they belong to and participate in? So I think nurture has so much to do with who we become. And that's why I look at America as a family, because the family, whether it's your family that you grew up in or mine, or the community we grow up in that either discriminates or is very welcoming of a diversity of people, or welcomes different religions, or is supportive of people in different economic classes, or not, that's our environment. That's the environment. And to some extent, a person might be able to change their environment. I know that for me in my own healing process, I was able to change the environment of the people that I brought into my life.
yeah.
I have a much better marriage now than I did to begin with. I have much healthier friends who see me as an equal, and we're not in a one up, one down game because of the work that I did before, right? So to some extent, we can change that environment, but to
Mm-hmm.
some extent, when you live in a country that is proposing policies and making laws and deciding where taxes are spent and what is valued and what isn't, that's the larger family that we're all impacted by. And so how can we play a role in changing that environment? And that's a tricky one, because to some extent we don't have power, but to some extent we actually really have more power than we think.
Mm-hmm. So, so taking the next step, talk to me because you explained to everyone what motivated you to write the book, how long it took you to write it, and really what your end goal is, and then when they buy this book,
Yeah.
how you want them to consume it. So the reason I'm saying this, I'm not talking to you now, Phyllis. The reason I'm saying this is people that do the work that Phyllis does, not dissimilar to the writings that I put out there. I don't give you answers to anything. I make you think because the answer to your problem is not is I don't have the answer. I am it's like doing an algebra equation with a number missing that makes it impossible to do the equation. You have the answer to that. So we're going to lay out the basics for you and then you've got to do the work. So
And that's really true. And I think that's also really empowering, because part of the problem that we face in our own lives, I think many people, and in society at large, is that we're being taught to give our power away to other people. Or we're being forced to give our power away to other people. And when we say the answers lie within and the solutions lie within, the best therapy is designed to help you find those answers within and to find that power within to actually embody your most essential self in the world. Um, so what we're looking at in the field of therapy really is to bring those healing techniques out of the office and into the world. So if we look at ourselves as a country, what's our history? What are our formative experiences? Who have modeled what for us in terms of what's acceptable and what's not? Who we should be and who she would not be, how we should treat other people. So we start with a history. And we have a history as a country that's really impacting us. Many of the early settlers here fled war, fled persecution, fled religious persecution, fled starvation, were released from jail to settle a new country. They brought trauma with them that has never been healed and has been passed down from generation to generation. And how did we play it out? We slaughtered the Native Americans.
You stole my
Slaves.
line. You stole my line. I was going to say, and we took it out.
Okay.
I was going to say, and we took it out on the indigenous people. So yeah.
Right. And we enslaved people from Africa, and we saw them as inferior, and we believed that we had a right to do that. And if you take a family, if an abusive parent feels that they have a right to enslave a child or starve them or beat them or rape them or ostracize them or work them to death, you would say they were mentally ill and they are a criminal. And this is one of the things that I think is really powerful about psychology and psychotherapy, and that is we look at not only the hurt that we have sustained and the impact of our own traumas, but we have to look fearlessly and honestly at the damage we've done to
Mm-hmm.
other people.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not for the sake of blame or retribution or hatred, but to heal it, to break the cycle. And I think that's where we stand in America today, that we're being asked to break the cycle of nationally legislated abuse and neglect.
So hold that thought because I have a question. I watched a little snippet. It was probably about a 10-minute snippet of a guy that uh, was just kind of witnessing about his sexual abuse when he was a young boy. And he goes through the whole thing and the ups and downs and where he's at and talks about being with his therapist and how that all, but he looks into the camera right at the end and he goes, the cycle stops with me.
Right.
And that's powerful in so many ways of what you're talking about. And oh, by the way, all of you people out there that are younger than me that think that this is all novel and we just have a today problem, go listen to Elvis Presley's song "In the Ghetto," because Elvis was singing about this phenomenon, and it's and the circles get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and you have to break those things. Um, Tell me uh, about your life team, who needs to be on it, and how you hire and fire people on your life team to do these things. I talk a lot about this because I have no trouble firing even family. Just because you're a blood relative doesn't mean that you get to be in my inner circle. So.
Right. I think it's a natural outgrowth of healing that we just shed the toxic layers. I had a very specific moment in my life, and I've had many, but the one that I recall in particular was somewhere in the middle of therapy. I had a large group of friends at that time, and somewhere in the middle of therapy, I asked myself, who do I actually feel good with? Who do I feel seen by? Who do I care about? Who do I actually feel cared for by? Or who of these people are sort of in competition with me, need to be one up with me, or who just, only talk about themselves and there's never space for me. And I did this huge clearing out. I didn't yell at anybody. I didn't blame anybody. I just stopped some of the relationships that weren't healthy for me and that really mirrored some of the narcissism that I grew up with. Because we tend, and this is a big thing that I talk about that's so important, we tend to repeat what we know when we don't have a chance to heal. So many people will say, well, if you were abused as a child, why do you stay with an abusive partner? As if you could just get up and leave. When in fact, we really tend on an unconscious level to be attracted to what we know, still trying to get the love we didn't get. And it's not until we heal those hurt part of ourselves and find our own love inside of ourselves that we can say no to abusive relationships, that we can say no to things and people that are unhealthy for us. So I say it's a natural outgrowth of the healing process that we begin to discriminate what's actually healthy in our environment. Now, for many people, there's not the opportunity to leave. And, I was blessed. I could choose who I wanted to have in my life. But I know without any doubt that there are many people who can't choose that. They live in violent communities.
Right.
They live in violent households. They live in an area where discrimination is something they face every time they walk out of their door. And so, that's where I feel like there's two things that are important. One is that you still do your own healing work. You still find your own integrity. You still find your own self-love. You still find your own niche as much as you possibly can. And then you advocate for brotherly love. You advocate for mental health. You advocate and you vote for people who stand for the values that you want to see spread around in the world and that you need in your own life. So for me, it's an individual, it's the microcosm and the macrocosm that desperately need to be addressed together today.
I have one more. We're in overtime, which is fine. I told you if we get going, overtime's great. I have one more question for you, and then I need you to tell us how to get the book and how to get some Phyllis in our life and that kind of thing.
Right.
But talk to me about leveraging safety to be manipulative. Because I find in society, the number one thing that we do is we save fear. So you and I are old enough to remember that if the TV was on and something said breaking news, or we're breaking away to the news, it was the president's been shot, it was big, right? It was historical. It was a moment that you were probably going to remember your whole life. Now, if you turn the TV on, everything's breaking news. Everything's catastrophic.
Right.
The adjectives that they use to describe stuff and pronouns are just crazy. They're crazy, big, giant words, right? It's all sensational, and it drives fear. But it's no different than saying if you don't drink 3 ounces of pear juice every morning, you could have breast cancer because this cures breast cancer because somebody did some study. And any woman that has even a remote fear of getting breast cancer, now they're drinking pear juice every day. They don't even know why they're doing it other than the fact that somebody scared them into doing it. Talk to me about that, because I think overcoming this fear is how you get out of the environment, how you handle the narcissist, how you do those things. You need help to do it. You need somebody to prop you up, give you a little bit of courage, but you got to step into these tough spaces, and you need to challenge the status quo, because the status quo stinks. And when you answer that, can you tell me a part of society that you think is working well?
Well, I think there actually are a lot of parts of society that are working well, and they're not in the news. There's incredible philanthropy going on for all kinds of movements and organizations helping to stop sex trafficking, helping inner city people grow gardens in their neighborhood to have healthy food, people volunteering in prisons to work with people, teach them meditation, talk to them like human beings, help them be rehabilitated to go back out into society in a more safe and meaningful way. I see it all the time. My husband and I our truck blew up on a trip and we were stuck by the side of the road. Every single person that passed us stopped to help. Every single person. There is so much goodness in America and in the world. And it's not top of the news, unfortunately. It's not the role model. It's not the sensation story like that we read every day. And yet we crave those stories. We crave hearing how people came to the rescue of a child stuck in a well or a house burning down and somebody ran in and got the dog. We love those stories. And so I think there is incredible goodness going on in America. It's just the tip of the iceberg that I've touched. But we really do, I think many people who want power, and I think I talk about this at length in my book, the whole issue about power. We need to change many of the paradigms that we're living in. And one of them has to do with power. Power is addictive, like alcohol is addictive, like money is addictive. And the more power people have that's uncontrolled, unrestrained, and unchecked, the more mentally unwell they become. And we see this all the time. We need to move to a model of power shared. That means we talk to each other. That means we listen to each other. That means we agree to resolve our differences peacefully for the sake of reconnecting with one another, cooperating with one another, and creating that healthy environment that we all want to live in. Nobody wants to live in an environment where their child could be snatched and put in a cage.
Right.
But we allow that to happen to other people, and that disconnect is a mental health issue. And so if we look at what we all want in our own lives, and we were committed to only being with other people, the best, imperfect best we can, if we were committed to being with other people, all people, the way we want people to be with us, we'd have a different world.
Yeah.
We'd have no more war.
I agree. In my book, I have a little one-liners at the end of the chapter to make you introspective. One of them is knowledge is power only when shared. because
Right.
it plays off of all of your power stuff, and you're actually more powerful once you start to share the knowledge. You're not weaker, and it clears up bias, it clears up assumption, so you're operating on some level of reality and not your
Right.
false reality, all those kind of things. Tell us how to get the book. Tell us how to get a hold of you. Put all this. I'll put it all in the edit, and we'll get it out and put it on our.
Yeah, and let me just say quickly, because I think you asked me this before and
Sure.
I got sidetracked in my
Yeah.
own answer.
No, you're good.
But my book is really dedicated to both kind of analyzing how we got to such a place of divisiveness and violence on a psychological level and what we can do to heal it. And the second half of the book is really all about the shifting paradigms and the specific skills and tools for listening and taking responsibility for ourselves and peaceful conflict resolution, and why it's so important for us to do that not only in our own lives, but on a global level, really. So it's partly diagnosis and it's partly cure. I just wanted to emphasize that that's the structure of the book. You can find me at my website is my name, www.phyllisleavitt.com, and there's tons of information on my website about this book, America in Therapy. There's lots of podcast recordings on there. There's blogs I've written. There's a way to contact me if you would like more information or you would like to talk with me. I'm happy to talk with anybody who wants to talk. And I've had some interesting emails from people who just have read things that I've written or heard things that I've said and they want to further the conversation.
Sure.
I've just created a whole course based on my book that is designed for someone to apply to their own life. So I'd love to make that available. And I have some other free offerings that I've made about conflict resolution. I'm on all the social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Substack,
Sure.
Instagram. You can find me anywhere, but the best place is really my website.
I love it. This is we could probably do a round two because I have other questions, especially for women specifically. I'm going to send you an email. I got a couple of needs, but hey, folks, that is just scratching the surface. So couple things. Get the book, then get a hold of Phyllis. Read the book, then get a hold of Phyllis. Make yourself at least a 200 level knowledgeable person based on what motivates and what Phyllis's passions are, and then you can have a deeper conversation with her. Professionals like Phyllis that have been in the arena, they've got all the scars, and then they come out and they teach people in the arena how to get out of the situations. Those are the people that you can probably share your deepest, darkest with. And not only will there be no judgment, but there's a supportive plan. I grew up with a wonderful mother who loved me, but it was just her and I. And when you're raised by your mother as a single boy, it's more of a corporation than this loving environment. And for those that know, and for those that don't, there's a whole explanation that goes along with it. But I think one of the things my mother could have done better was give me an A every once in a while on something that I did. And so when you have to overcome these things, that's just my personal story. When you have to overcome these things, you need some help. And so Phyllis is spot on, and she's gonna push you a little bit on your paradigms. So she's a kangaroo leader. Go ahead, give us some last words of wisdom or a one-liner for people to take away, and then we'll.
Well, I get asked that all the time, and there's probably many one-liners, but the one that often comes to me is I think a lot of people today feel powerless to really impact the world around them, and they watch atrocities going on, and they don't agree with things that are happening, but they don't feel like they can do anything. And my message is, we are all important. Every grain of sand makes this beach. Whatever you do in your own life to be more loving, more educated, more compassionate, more of a contribution of your greatest gifts and strengths to the world makes a difference. There is a ripple effect, even if you never see it. We know that hatred and violence have a ripple effect. Well, love and caring and support and generosity have a ripple effect too. So never feel like your world is too small and you don't make a difference, because we all do.
Amen. Couldn't agree more. Folks, again, that's the Kangaroo Leadership Podcast. I told you I'd never disappoint. Phyllis, thank you.
Amen.